Hello everyone and welcome to another Adventures in Eagle Territory. My name is Vassili Hartofilax. I am an intern here at the National Eagle Center. Some of you may have seen me on last Tuesday's live stream, and this is the second part of our intern takeover for the month of July. And today what we're going to be talking about is bald eagle nesting trios and cooperative nesting among bald eagles. It's a pretty interesting topic, so let's get right into it with what is cooperative breeding? What are nesting trios? And what that is when more than just a pair of birds work together to successfully raise eaglets, hatchlings, or take care of a nest. And bald eagles in particular, we see a lot of what is it's two males to one female. We call that polyandry. So that's in contrast to polygyny, which you see one male mating with multiple females. Polyandry is not quite as common, but it is what happens in bald eagles. We do tend to see this in some more social species like American crows, Floridian scrub jays, and Harris hawks, and Harris hawks. They're a much more social species than bald eagles, so it's not quite as weird when it happens, but we know that bald eagles they prefer to be more solitary. They don't really like each other as much, and they're very territorial, so when this kind of thing happens, it's kind of weird. But in Harris hawks in particular, they do engage in this sometimes because there's not a lot of high quality territory available. So if their house market isn't looking too well, they got to move in with someone else. So what they're going to do is they're all going to pair up, get into a group of three usually. It will be two males to one female, and both those males will actually copulate or mate with that female. So they will have hatchlings that belong to both fathers, and we see that in bald eagles as well. So bald eagles, the mating trios could be a result as well, like the Harris hawks, due to lack of high quality territory. Maybe there's a shortage of females in the area, and that could be why they tolerate each other, why they put up with each other to do these cooperative nesting groups. But in bald eagles in particular, even though it's not super common, it has happened before. So in Alaska in 1977, there was one recorded. In Minnesota in 1983, in California in 1992, and Illinois and Wisconsin actually both have active bald eagle trio nests, which is pretty cool. And it's not that there was this weird explosion of bald eagle trios in recent times. It's just that we have better technology to further monitor and document them. Back a few decades ago, they didn't really have cameras like we do, not a lot of good things like that. They usually had to do their main duties through using like telescopes and binoculars. And if they really wanted to get a sense of what was going on in the nest, they had to climb up a tree. I don't know about you guys, I don't particularly want to stick my face into an active bald eagle nest. I may come out without my nose. So they don't really want to be engaging in that. So now that we are actually able to get that insider kind of information with our new technology, it's a lot better and a lot easier to understand what's going on. But even with this modern technology, we don't fully understand why they do this, and I think that's pretty cool. We can't really get inside a bald eagle's head to see why they're putting up with each other, what they're doing. But there are some clear benefits to cooperative nesting. They will generally, the hatchlings will do much better. If there's an extra hand in the nest, that means there can be more food brought in. There can be another person to guard the nest, someone else to bring in extra nesting materials, another person for incubation, all kinds of stuff. So it stands to reason that these eaglets are going to have a much easier chance at life if there's a third parent present. So that's one of the reasons why it's so cool, because some of the hatchlings will die. If there's a clutch of 3 eggs, usually 1 to 2 of them will die before they fledge. But as you will see with bald eagle trios, usually there's a higher number of hatchlings that do much better and much healthier. So moving on from that, we're going to talk about the nest near Fulton, Illinois, at the Upper Mississippi River Refuge up there. So we start out with Valor 1, our original male, and Hope, our original female. They were the original nesting pair that occupied this nest. They came in, they were going to nest very standard, and as it turns out, Valor 1 was a terrible father. We all know bald eagles are very bad parents. So to be considered a bad parent by bald eagle standards, he had to do some pretty negligent things. He was so bad, in fact, that biologists originally didn't think the eggs were going to hatch at all. He wouldn't help Hope incubate them. He wouldn't help do really any of the nest duties that are expected of male bald eagles. But the eggs did hatch, and there were 2 eaglets that were in that nest. And his negligence did not get any better, even though there were 2 baby eaglets right in front of him. Star is the later female, Hope is the original, my bad. But Hope would stay on the nest, guard it, and she would leave sometimes to either go hunt or go find something else, maybe go take a bath. And Valor 1 was supposed to stay and protect the nest. But he'd be there for all of 10, 15 minutes, just being like, I'm bored, and he would leave. And he would routinely leave the eaglets unguarded. So it's no surprise that those eaglets eventually died before they fledged, which was very unfortunate. So it makes sense that the next breeding season in 2013, Hope actually partnered up with another male in the area. Valor 2 showed up and knew that he was probably going to be a better father. He started imposing on these guys. He would hang around the trees, wouldn't make too many really quick advances, but over time, he eventually usurped Valor 1's place as Hope's main partner. But even after that, Valor 1 still hung around. We know that bald eagles have very high nest site fidelity, so they're going to be very attached to that nest. So Valor 1, even though he wasn't engaging in any nesting activities, any nesting duties, not caring for the eaglets, he was still around keeping an eye on it. But Valor 1 did prove to be a much better father. Those 2 eaglets were raised to fledging, which was pretty awesome. Hope finally had a successful clutch. And then in 2016, we finally got the first confirmed case of cooperative nesting with this trio. Valor 1 eventually got cycled back into the group, and they all shared nesting duties together. And interestingly enough, both the males mated with Hope. So in that clutch, there were eaglets that belonged to both Valor 1 and Valor 2, so they had incentive to stick around and care for them because they were their kids. That's how they pass on their genes directly. So they wanted to be around and help out. So they engaged in all the nesting duties. So they would go and pick up sticks and bring them back to the nest. Interestingly enough, Hope didn't always like their placement. So when she came back to the nest and saw that Valor 1 or 2 had dropped some nesting materials off, she'd always move them and put them in a different spot because they weren't in the right place. I'm sure the situation sounds very familiar to most of you. So she would go and replace those, move them around, but they also engaged in feeding the eaglets, in protecting the nest, taking care of them. And all those eaglets in 2016, they all fledged. They grew up, they fledged, they took off, they had a great time. But then in 2017, a tragedy did strike this nest. So they had 2 eaglets in the nest at the time, and around mid-March, there were 2 unknown opposing eagles that came and started just attacking their nest. They would come, and it was every day, continuously, aerial attack every day. And they had to go through and try and defend it. Hope engaged in a direct fight with one of these eagles, and she went MIA. She went missing. She was never found again, so she's presumed dead. And things were looking pretty bleak for the nest at the time, but really, interestingly enough, very odd, Valor 1 and 2 didn't leave, didn't take off. They banded together and defended those eaglets, defended that nest. Those eaglets fledged. They fought off the opposing pair and just really just blew our expectations way out of the water. They did an awesome job with these eaglets, and then later that year, they didn't break up either. They were seen with another female months later. Her name is Star, and you can see her right up here. There's Star right there with Valor 1 and 2. And she's a new female. She was much younger. So when they saw her originally, she was collecting nest materials with this pair. And she had still that brown on her head. So she was around 5 at the time, but she was sexually mature. And then the following year, excuse me, in 2018, they have been raising eaglets ever since. In 2019, they had a trio, or I believe it was a trio, that all fully fledged. And then in 2020, she laid her first eggs on Valentine's Day. So pretty romantic for Star. But she laid that egg, and then 2 days later, another egg was laid. Those eaglets also fledged by about mid-June. And unfortunately, about August 10th of 2020, a derecho storm, which is a very strong windstorm, came through the area and knocked that nest down. And their nest was completely destroyed. And again, in another very unusual twist of events, Valor 1, Valor 2, and Star were rebuilding that nest a few days later. So they went, got more nest materials, made a new nest, and she actually laid her first eggs this year in the new nest, February 15th. And so they are still doing awesome. So it's very interesting to see how this works and this family dynamic is going on, because this is not something we see in bald eagles. It's very uncommon. So because we have these these eagles, these families right at our disposal, we're going to learn a lot about them. But moving on from the nest in Fulton, Illinois, here's the nest on the 1000 Islands Conservancy Zone in Kaukauna, Wisconsin. Awesome people down there, awesome environmental center. They do great educational programs, but this big conservancy zone has lots of trails. It's very untouched. So they do lots of eagle monitoring out there because they have the necessary requirements for it. Nothing is really impeding these guys at all. So originally it started out much like how the one in Illinois did. It looked like they were going to have 2 adults, pretty standard nesting, and lo and behold, 3 adults were confirmed at this nest in about May, which is pretty crazy. We have another active one that we know of, and we don't know a whole lot about this nest because it's brand new. We just started monitoring it, us personally, but the people over at the 1000 Islands Environmental Center have been monitoring it starting this year. So we don't know a whole lot about it, but what we do know is that it is very special. Not only because there's an active nesting trio, but they have 4 eaglets. 4 of them. You can see it if you can look right up there. It's very hard to tell. There's little tiny eagle poof balls directly above my finger. There are 4 of them, and you can kind of make them out. The pictures were taken from a bit farther away, so it's kind of hard to see, but they have 4 eaglets. That is very uncommon for bald eagles. Usually the clutches max out at about 3, and even then, they probably will not have 3 fledgling eagles. They will be about 2, maybe even 1 more commonly. It's a very hard life for these eagles when they're young, but these guys have 4 of them, and it's not that anything bad happened to them. With the assistance of another eagle, we actually don't know the sex of it currently. It appears to be smaller than the other 2, so it could be a male, but we won't know until either someone lays an egg or they're standing next to each other. So we don't fully know yet, but with that extra parent, these eagles have been raised to fledging. As of July 3rd, 2 of the 4 have already fledged from the nest. And we're waiting on the next update to see what happened with the other 2, but they were in the nest at the time, and they were doing awesome. Actually, that's what's pictured right here. The nest is much roomier now. Those are the 2 eagles that are still in the nest, and they're either they have already fledged or they will have soon. We are waiting for another update from the 1000 Islands Environmental Center, and they update it regularly just about every week. So you can definitely check that out. They are awesome at what they do, and they actually have videos of these guys on their Facebook page, so definitely check that out. You can actually see them in action. But really, to sum this all up, bald eagle trios are very uncommon, but they are an awesome phenomenon of nature. Just because the species is known for being very territorial, very antisocial, they don't want to be around each other, and yet when they band together in these big family groups, they do awesome. They can raise 4 eaglets to fledging. That is crazy. So it's really awesome, and I think it's pretty interesting. We don't fully understand it yet because we have a lot to learn about it. There's still so much out there that we can gain from this, and we'll get that through continued monitoring, through our modern technology, actually being able to see what they're doing. So it will be very awesome. It's very interesting to see how this develops. So definitely keep an eye out on that. Remember that nest in Illinois and Fulton, Illinois is still active. You can read a lot about it, and the one here in Kaukauna, Wisconsin. Definitely keep tabs on that because they will continue to be updated. But I have done a lot of talking about bald eagle nesting trios, and that would lead some to believe that there are lots of bald eagles in this area, which there are. In Minnesota, we have 2,300 nesting pairs. Not to say that we have any confirmed trios, but there are a lot of them. This was actually taken south of Alma, Wisconsin. And what happened was a train came by and stirred up all these eagles from this area. There are just so many of them. This was actually taken by one of our staff members, Jared. He came through and recorded this himself. But there are just so many. So we are actually going to be running winter field trips to see things like this, to see these eagles out in their wild and natural habitat. And it doesn't just have to be bald eagles. You can book trips for golden eagles and I believe trumpeter swans as well. So you can go through and kind of tailor a trip to your needs and what you want to see. I mean, who doesn't want to go see golden eagles in Minnesota in the winter? That's awesome, right? We don't see them a lot in here. So if you get the opportunity to do that, I definitely would. And just remember, these field trips do fill up fast. But through your admissions, through your bookings of the field trips, through everything you guys do for us, we're able to keep the center going and bringing you live streams like this, keeping our eagles fed, doing all the things that we do to make the experience as great as we can for all of you. So that is all I have for you guys today. Be on the lookout next week for Grant as he continues our intern takeover. He's got some awesome topics coming up, so definitely be ready to check those out. I'm sure he will do a great job, but that's all I've got for you guys today, and thank you for watching the live stream, and that is it. See you all later.